Hello and welcome to the Perth Gaming Crew Show. People of Perth and beyond, we know you have missed us. It has been a couple of weeks, and even more, we know how much you loved our Super Nintendo special, which we did just a couple of months back. So we're going to deliver more of what you want today. Today, I've got Johnny joining me as usual. Johnny, how are you doing, buddy?
Yeah, it's good to be back. We were away so long, I grew a mustache.
Happy November
Yeah, happy November, everyone.
for a very worthy cause. And Ludley, great to have you back. Welcome back to the podcast.
Always a pleasure.
Awesome to have you, man. So, people of Perth and beyond, we have a Super Nintendo special. We have covered the console and our favorite memories previously. If you haven't seen that episode, go check it out. We talked about, I think, three of our most memorable games. But today, we are going to give you our definitive. This is the right list of 15 games on the Super Nintendo that are absolute must plays. They're absolute gems. As we know, the Super Nintendo was an incredible console and had first and third party games galore. So if you grew up in that era like we did, it was happy eating as a console gamer. If you didn't, try and go find yourself an $800 Super Nintendo Mini or jump on the Switch online service and play some of these bangers, because we have got an absolutely killer list for you. And speaking of killer, I'm going to kick it off today and get a bit greedy and talk about one of my favorite Super Nintendo games of all time, possibly one of my favorite games of all time and one of my favorite franchises. This is Killer Instinct. So for those of you who are like, I don't know what that is, you should know. It's your fault that you don't, because it's one of those most amazing fighting franchises. It's honestly right up there with Street Fighter, Mortal Kombat, Tekken, Virtual Fighter, all of those games. I think a lot of people got exposed to Killer Instinct from playing it on the Super Nintendo because it was a global game, and it was just so cool. It was done by Rare, who did the Donkey Kong franchise, and what really set it apart is that it had the 3D polygonal graphics. With like really complex sprite work as well. So it looked amazing for its time, but it was just so cool. All the characters had like names that fit the character. So Cinder, as you can see on the screen, would shoot fire. You had Glacius, who was like the Iceman. One of my favorites was Saber Wolf, who was like a werewolf. And it was just all your like typical mishmash monster tropes in a fighting game with a great combo system. Yeah, my favorite character was a character called Riptor, who was like a raptor that shot like acid out of his mouth and did massive combos. The music was phenomenal for the time. It was just like really pulled you in, sucked you in. It was a very gory, gritty game. So it's kind of funny that the original Mortal Kombat on the Super Nintendo got nerfed, but this game was just like as violent as F. Like it really was. And it had one of the coolest boss fights of all time, which was Idol, which was this two-eyed Cyclops thing with a giant club that would just stamp you and get a 50-hit combo in and completely knock you off your socks and throw you off the bridge. This game was wicked. Johnny, I'm going to throw to you. Did you ever play Killer Instinct or hear about this game?
I missed this one back in the day, John. I think I was so absorbed with Street Fighter and to a lesser extent Mortal Kombat that I didn't experience this, and I'm regretting it because it does look like it would be right up my alley.
Yeah, time to catch up, my friend. Ludley, how about you? Was this big in Brazil back in the day?
Oh yeah, I played this one. This was a well-known game. It was not as big as Mortal Kombat or Street Fighter, but it was the third one. The third one. The one that everybody was talking about at the time.
Yeah, absolutely. So that's Killer Instinct. You can play it now on the Switch Online, but also there's like a modern remake on the Xbox consoles if you want to pick that up. But Johnny, Lovely, I'll throw to you. What's the first game that you have on your list today?
The first game that I have in my list is a game that actually I didn't play on the Super Nintendo, but that was more because of a barrier of language. Usually, by my age and the kids in Brazil, we will try to play games that you don't have to read much. But now I'm catching up. I'm playing the Final Fantasy VI.
Ooh, what do you got there? What are you playing it on? Is that a game?
This is the Analog Pocket. So I'm playing
Very cool.
Yeah, I got this one actually because you can actually put and play in the TV as well. So it's kind of a Game Boy Advance Switch, you know? So you put there, get a control play. So, of course, that's not the Super Nintendo version, it's the Game Boy Advance. There is some difference, but I didn't bother much as long as like the story is the same. And Kefka, everybody talk about Kefka, so I was like, no, I need to know who is this guy, and it's good so far, so good. I went through half of the game, and it's shocking, like what's happened in the middle of the game. But yeah, now I'm catching up the RPGs, the things that not much kids in my age used to play in Brazil.
Johnny, did you know about this game? This was
look, you could almost call the Super Nintendo the Super Nintendo RPG. Like the system was just had so many great RPGs. So like Final Fantasy, Super Mario RPG, Secret of Mana, which I want to talk about today because I've just been playing that on the Mini. It was just the RPG system. So yeah, you got to call out Final Fantasy. I think if you're talking top 15 and SNES games for sure.
Yeah, I think like Final Fantasy VI is probably the most beloved or one of the most beloved for the whole franchise, and a lot of people go back to it. I've been teeing up Earthbound, and then my next game on the list, because I missed this at the time, is to go back and try this. But I know it's huge, and as Ludley said, there's lots of twists, and I'm just saving it for getting through Earthbound, and then I want to come back to this and give it a try.
And Final Fantasy, it's funny because they changed the names on the West because they didn't release a couple of them. So this back the day wasn't called Final Fantasy VI, was called Final Fantasy III. So it was made people confused for a long time, but at least nowadays they fix this everywhere. So at least now you can go to 1 to 16. You don't have to worry about more the number. But back in the day, everybody's like, "Oh, what tree you're talking about? The Japanese tree or the American tree?"
You needed a conversion chart.
A conversion chart, yes.
Yeah, and look, for those of you who want to catch up on these old games, like you can go do it old school style, like Ludley has on the Pocket Analog, or there's like a Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster Collection, which we saw footage of. It has 1 through to 6. I think I saw a physical version was like $100 when it came out. Up to you. You spend your money the way you want to. Johnny, what's the first game on your list?
Well, I thought it's only appropriate that we mention a Super Nintendo launch title to begin with, and that is, of course, Super Mario World. This released very, very, very early, obviously, as a launch title in the Super Nintendo generation. It was released in 1990 in Japan. We got it a few years later in Australia. We had to wait a little bit. And as much as I love Super Mario Bros. 3 on the NES, it's a fantastic game. For me, Super Mario World is sort of the pinnacle of the 2D Mario platforming genre. And the reason,
100%.
My reason for that is what it brings in terms of freedom of exploration, variety of power-ups, variety of level design mechanics and bosses. The boss fights are all very kind of creative, or your battles with the Kid Koopas are all kind of varied. And of course, it introduces the much beloved Yoshi to the series as a rideable character. You can almost consider Yoshi a power-up in some respects. But the game just has so much replayability because you can do just a standard run through the levels, kind of fairly linear, or you can go find all your little secret paths and that sort of thing. One other reason I have a lot of regard for this game is I've read up a little bit about its development, and it was developed over about 3 years in the late 80s. And even after all that, Shigeru Miyamoto even is sort of quoted as feeling it was a bit rushed. Like that just says like how much sort of devotion to his craft the man has. But it really, the polish really showed in that Super Nintendo launch title. So any kind of list of top SNES titles in my book has to include Super Mario World.
Absolutely. Ludley, did you play this game? Are you familiar with it?
I think I'm gonna join in and just jump on my own because I put the Super Mario All Stars as one of my game in the list, and Super Mario World is there, and that's impressive because Super Mario World was and is probably the best 2D Mario. And no, I played this game until this day. I still playing this game. I put my kids to play this game. It is amazing. It's amazing. I think, not saying that the new ones is bad, but I think that was peak Super Nintendo platform for Mario. And funny thing is, a couple of years after, they put in the All Stars. Yeah.
Exactly. Super Mario World is really cool. Like I had this game, I really enjoyed it. I liked, for me, most of all, it's not my favorite like 2D Super Mario game, but I really liked Yoshi. Like I just felt like whenever you lose Yoshi, remember you lose him, he runs away, and you're like, no, I need to get you back. Like you are the most important thing in this game to me anyway, because I was like, you get the extra hit, like you get an extra life, so to speak. And then like you can just eat everything. It's so good, and like spit it out as fire or shells. It was just like really cool to include. So yeah, Super Mario World. And it's on the SNES Mini. Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Johnny.
Sorry, I was just going to say it was such a fun mechanic with Yoshi is that you could get Yoshi back. Like you see Yoshi kind of scramble off, but you have an opportunity to climb back on him, which is a cool dynamic. So it wasn't just like a normal power up where you got hit, you lose it. It was like very creative in that sense and very kind of immersive in a sense that you could, if Yoshi got rattled, you could jump back on him if you were quick enough.
Yeah, true, very true. And it's kind of funny that they doubled down on that with the sequel, Super Mario World to Yoshi's Island, where you'll play as Yoshi, and when Mario gets hit, he flies away in a bubble and just screams like a baby, which is really annoying. But yeah, Super Mario World is absolutely classic. Go play it. It's very easy to play these days if you didn't grow up with it. It is a game we can recommend that you just try out now to get like a core Mario experience that we grew up with. Moving on to something slightly different. My next pick was glory in all its form, the Mortal Kombat franchise. So Mortal Kombat 1 is my favorite game of all time. But Mortal Kombat 2 is I rate it higher in terms of the SNES games because it comes fully decked out with blood and the fatalities that haven't been nerfed. It's kind of funny that when Mortal Kombat 1 was released on the Super Nintendo, they're like, we can't do this. But then they let Mortal Kombat 2 just be itself and be completely violent and full of blood and all this kind of stuff. Mortal Kombat 2 is also just an amazing step up with as the second game, like in the franchise anyway. Like it's got more ninjas. You can play Shang Tsung, who was like the boss in the first game. So just playing like a boss was just freaking cool. And the story, the way it developed, where Shang Tsung kind of gets humbled, joins the tournament, and Shao Kahn comes in, is just wicked as. And then in terms of sub-bosses, they're like, let's just make a better Goro by putting Kintaro on there. He's like a tiger Goro who can jump on you, can breathe fire. He just roars. Super freaking cool. And then, of course, they expanded everything. Like there were more characters, like really iconic characters like Kung Lao that we see. And a lot of the core characters, like Sub-Zero, got extra moves. Like Sub-Zero could do a ground freeze, which wasn't very useful, but I loved it. I just thought it looked so good. And Reptile was a playable character with his own like moves, so he could spit acid, he could do like a force ball. It was just like, oh man, like everything you would want from a Mortal Kombat 2 sequel. Lads, did you get in on Mortal Kombat 2 on the Super Nintendo or in other forms back in the day?
Oh yeah, Mortal Kombat. But I went to my favorite would be the Mortal Kombat 3. They have a trilogy for the Super Nintendo, right? Or it was PlayStation? I'm not 100% sure.
PlayStation had like the Ultimate Mortal Kombat.
I think I think I think the ultimate version of the 3 was in PlayStation. Yeah. No, I play all the Mortal Kombat. Like all the Mortal Kombat on the Super Nintendo was a must go. I had to play all of them. Like it's amazing, absolutely
very
amazing.
well known.
Yeah,
they were cool. Johnny,
and when and that's the thing, like you're a kid, you know, and then you have a game like with full blood and like 3 fatalities and everything. It's like I'm playing this.
Yes,
I'm doing that.
Exactly. It's like I can do this because like you can't watch some of these shows as a kid like that are like MA or whatever. It's like, but I can play it on my Super Nintendo.
My parents didn't pay much attention what I was playing, so that's okay.
Goodbye, Mario. Put in Mortal Kombat and do some fatalities, animalities, babalities, friendships. If you're feeling soft and kind, whatever you want to do, you could do it all. It was just so freaking cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought it was interesting that like after they obviously saw that their competition with the Sega Genesis, their first one they had included blood. And so they thought, well, we're not going to be outdone by the competition the second time, so we'll bring the blood back in for Mortal Kombat 2. Don't want to be outdone by the rivals, Sega.
Nintendo do what Sega don't now in this case. So Ludley, what's your next pick? What's the next banger game you've got?
I gotta go back to Mario,
Yeah.
but the All-Star package was amazing. Like first, of course, Super Mario World. I think it's the game that would spend most of the time there. But the one thing that I need to mention about the All-Star, they have a remake, and nobody talks about, because the Super Mario from the NES was remade graphically for the Super Nintendo. So it was like all new graphics and everything. I was like, one of the is more not much as remake, more like a remaster. You know, like the mechanic of the game is there. It's just the graphic is like on pair with the Super Nintendo. And I think not only the first game, I think the second one as well. That is not true Super Mario. Like is because that story about this, but everybody knows much nowadays that what they did to America is like, instead of bring the lost stage or lost episodes from Japan, they got another game and repackaged America and brought to America. But even this game was remaster, re-graphics for the All-Star. So the All-Star has like all the Super Mario games, and they made it better. So it was shocking. Was good. Really good. Really good. You have so much options there to play.
Yeah, it was awesome. Johnny, did you get in on this like package?
Oh yeah, All Stars was a great value package. Yeah, you got to play. If you wanted to go back to the NES Super Mario Brothers trilogy, you could, and then you had all this amazing extra stuff, like the super difficult Lost Levels, such as the Japanese sequel to Super Mario Brothers. But yeah, no, definitely got to be in the list for sure.
Yeah, this is like a cool package. I remember like when I was growing up, I played Super Mario Brothers on the original NES, but not the second game or the third game. And I saw like a friend of mine had this package and they played 3. And it's interesting because some people bought on the Super Nintendo because they'd heard how good the Nintendo was, or they'd grown out of it. And even though like Nintendo often gets criticized for remasters, it's just a smart decision, because people who bought a Super Nintendo could be like, oh, I really want to play those original Mario games like I did, and that's how I did through this package. And it's like, well, you get all of them, and like Ludley said, it looks better. The first one just looks really nice. Like it's got like that updated art style in the second one too. So it's just a really cool like package to have, an absolute like something you should have if you have a Super Nintendo for sure. Johnny, what do you got?
I got to talk about The Simpsons and how ubiquitous The Simpsons was in the 90s and beyond, but especially the 90s. And I spent a lot of time in the sort of mid-90s with a collection of mini games that was packaged up as a game called Virtual Bart. So the way you access these mini games was through a roulette wheel where Bart's strapped up to this virtual reality machine, very ahead of its time, of course, and he's going in and playing all these different mini games that involve the full cast of the Simpsons family and broader Simpsons sort of universe characters. And so there's mini games where Bart's a dinosaur and he's chasing after like Simpsons characters who are basically like cavemen and women. There's like a baby Bart stage where you're kind of climbing through the trees as baby Bart for some reason. Oh, one of my personal favorites is the Pig Bart mini game where you're working through your level like it's a platformer where you're trying to work your way through Krusty the Clown's corn dog factory.
Of course.
Just
like in the TV show.
Yeah. There's another one. My favorite in the collection of mini games was called Class Picture, where you're hiding behind a letterbox, throwing tomatoes or eggs at your classmates, and the intention is to ruin the class photo. So the end screen is like a picture of the class photo, but all the characters you've hit in the time, their photos are sort of marked by a tomato or egg stain. And I think I just enjoyed this so much because it brought the Simpsons humor to a video game so very, very well. I have to give special mention to the like the failure screen of Pig Bart, where Homer is like munching down on corn dogs, and he momentarily is terrified because one comes out and it's Bart shaped, but he still, but of course he still eats it. He's like only momentarily disturbed by that, and then he's back to his gluttonous
That's
ways
great.
as Homer was famous for. But yeah, it's a little bit of gem of a game. It's I played it a lot in the 90s. But yeah, it was just that was the time, and The Simpsons was just ubiquitous. They were on everything from lunchboxes to video games, and yeah, I had a lot of fun with this one. Had you guys ever played Virtual Bart or any of the other Simpsons Super Nintendo games?
I didn't play Virtual Bart. Like, it just wasn't around, at my local video store or when I went to like Kmart or Myer to buy games. So when you put it on the list, I didn't even know it existed. And then seeing that footage was like, oh, even like the slide with the episode where Homer goes in the slide and blocks the slide, and all the kids get sent down to like clean out the slide and it gets taken away. Just genius. It looks like it's actually a pretty fun game too. The only game I played was, I don't know the exact name of it, but it's where Bart, he's like fighting space aliens, but it's a bit of an adventure platformer game, and
Is that Space Mutants on the NES? Yeah,
that could be it. Yeah, I would hide that one, but it was cool looking, but quite frustrating. So I kind of wish I'd come across Virtual Bart because this looks really cool. Yeah, very very cool. Well, the next one that I think has to come up is just a small one. It just scraped in on the list. Like, it was one that I wasn't sure about. It was like, do we bring this up? Like, does it fit in the top 15? And I think it just makes it. It just look. This is the game that is definitive for most people who grew up in the Super Nintendo era or who look back on that era fondly. Super Metroid was definitely a big part of my household. I remember more so watching my older brother watching it, and he was great at it and much better than me. And I just watch him because he knew like the levels and where to go and all that kind of stuff. But I think Super Metroid is really like, it encapsulates what the Super Nintendo was compared to the Nintendo, where it was everything became super. It was like the same type of game. So, for example, in Super Metroid, when you shot your standard laser, it wouldn't be a tiny little like short range thing. It would be long range, which would deal with a major frustration in the first game. Your character had more life, so it was a bit more user friendly, and that might have frustrated hardcore fans, but I think it gave it more broad appeal. And then graphically, it just had all the bells and whistles. Like in the very first scene, you land your like your spaceship on the planet Zebes, and there's rain, and it just looks really, really freaking cool. It, it just plays really well. Like, it's a game you can go pick up now. It is the quintessential Metroidvania game, but the way I describe it from like when I was growing up is more like it's an adventure game where it's a horror game like the Alien franchise, which is inspired by, because you don't know where to go, left or right. There's no clear objectives. You do have a map, thank God, this time. Another like hallmark of being improved to the Super Nintendo. And again, it's like many Super Nintendo games that still looks great. Like, it holds up with really clear colors and distinctive art style. Guys, Super Metroid. I can see you chomping at the bit to talk about it, Johnny. What's this game to you?
One of my favorite games of all time. This is a game that I played replayed so many times. It's that kind of game that I just got this muscle memory. Okay, I'm going to shoot that block, and there's going to be an energy tank or a missile there. It's just because I've played it so much, but I still enjoy it each time I replay it. It's possibly the best 2D Metroid game. Possibly the best Metroid game. Full stop.
You're allowed to say it, Johnny. Yeah. You're allowed to say it. Yeah, comments can hate us. The viewers can hate us, but they're wrong. It is the best of all time. It's another one of those
sort of tribal things where you either love the 2D Metroid style, or you like your first person Metroid, like your Metroid Prime sort of thing, and that's the real distinguishing. That tends to be the thing that defines which is your favorite Metroid game of all time. For me, it's easily Super Metroid, though. There's no question.
Yeah, absolutely. Ludley, did you get on Super Metroid? Was that available in Brazil? Was it kind of like big there, or not really?
Nobody used to talk much about this game at the time, but I have been playing lots of the 2D Metroids. I never had a chance to get my time to play this one. I usually, but all the new ones on the portables have been playing the Game Boy Advance, the 3DS, and the Switch. Yeah, I want to have a shot on this one because John is saying that's the best one, but Dread was amazing. So
yes, it is up for debate there.
Yeah.
It's really
let's see, because Dread was shockingly good. So let's check.
Yeah, I'm not ruling out a little bit of like nostalgia glasses, you know, like there's a little bit of nostalgia glasses just because played it at the time as when had the Super Nintendo at the time, and so there's probably a little bit of that in there.
Yeah, I think the mechanics probably didn't change much because, say, I'm playing the Game Boy Advance and play Dread, you know, the graphic is really good. You have a little bit more fluid, you know, because now in 3D you can do like not 3D, like 2D, but made in 3D.
Yeah.
But I didn't see the change in the mechanics so much. Like if you play the Game Boy Advance, you can go straight away to Dread, and you don't feel like, oh my god, this is a complete different game, you know. But yeah, so I think should be like mechanically should be similar. So I'll give it a shot. Like gonna be a difference, yeah.
And I think hands down, Super Metroid has one of the best opening scenes of a video game in like video game history. It's just that opening scene with Ridley comes in and steals the baby Metroid is just epic. Yeah, it's just superbly done.
And then you're in panic mode as a player because suddenly you've got to escape the ship, and it's like, what? Like, this is not how games start. Isn't this meant to be a quiet, build yourself up game, and you've got to escape? Like, it's awesome. Yeah, Super Metroid. Go check it out on the SNES Mini or the Switch Online service. And exciting, like with Metroid Dread, as you mentioned, Ludley. Without a doubt, there will be a sequel to Metroid Dread coming up in the next Switch. Like, we know Metroid Prime's coming. The 2D remake of Super Metroid has worked and it's sold well, so really excited to see where they take the series next.
Is a different team doing basically the same guys that did the Castlevanias for the 3DS and
that's right.
not 3DS, for the DS if I'm not wrong.
It was for the DS and it was ported to like the Xbox 360 and PS3. The HD version.
So basically these guys, they're like, oh, can we have a shot on Metroid? And they said Nintendo was there looking a lot and said like, look, you guys doing very well. That's can see why not they wouldn't do a sequel. They have to. The Dread was amazing. If I start to talk about Metroid, like we're not gonna stop.
No, it's it. And I think Ludley, we do need to say here and now that next year we are going to have a Metroid focused episode. It's coming Metroid next year. People are
Spotlight
awesome.
series,
Absolutely.
2025.
We smash every single game before that.
Oh yeah. Except the first. I tried that recently. Oh my god, it's really hard.
For the NES? You can play there's the Zero Mission on the Game Boy Advance.
Get stuck into it.
Yeah, I'm gonna try that. But we're gonna people of Perth and beyond. There is a Metroid episode coming next year. Hold your horses for that. Metroid Prime will be released, and you'll see us on the big screen talking about that. Ludley, what's your next game? I think you had about 3 left.
Yeah, we can. One that I really like you talking about is the Super Bomberman. Because I remember one of my friends had the 4-player adapter, you know, and that wasn't very common for people. Oh, that was good. That was good. It's a simple game, but it's so good to play. It's so good to play that game. Like it's you see the rivalry between the people, like, oh fuck, you lock me, oh no this, oh no that, you know. It is simple, but it's good, and you ended up you spend hours playing these games, you know.
Is this like Super Bomberman? I'm only aware of it through when the Switch came out. They did like a Super Bomberman R or something like that, which I know was bigger in Japan. And I think it's more multiplayer focused. It wasn't something that appealed to me, but is this a multiplayer game or is it still single player and you can go through levels? How does it kind of work? Like
the new one?
Yeah. Well, even the old one, like even this old one, Super Bomberman, can you play?
I can't tell much. The thing about Superman is because I only used to play in my friend's house, so we would go there, smash the multiplayer. I don't know. I don't think I would be playing Bomberman as a single player game. The fun there for me is always has everybody around, you know. I used to have this one on the PlayStation 3 as well. And it is funny because I remember that there was a point that I only have like 3 controls, but I have the remote control for the DVD, and you can use that. And because it's only go up and down, left and right, and put a bomb, you can actually you could use the remote control play well.
Oh,
So
cool.
we do what we could there. I
That's
know the new one for the Switch, you can play with 8 people. So Bomberman is made for multiplayer. You know, it's made to have everybody around, and like one lock and others like, oh, now wait to die, you know? And you get like, oh, I can't do anything now.
very cool. Very
Yeah.
cool. Super Bomberman. And Johnny, what do you got for your next game?
I think similar in the kind of multiplayer zone, although the Mario Kart series has had so many iterations now. Mario Kart 8 Deluxe is out of this world. I have to say I still, and there's probably a bit of nostalgia tinted glasses on, but I still have a bit of fondness for the OG entry on the Super Nintendo. I spent countless hours with buddies in the 90s in battle mode, the balloon popping battle mode, where you're running around a stage trying to take out your buddies. And I actually fired it up recently with some mates, and we had a great time running around shooting shells at each other, and it was just chaos on the screen. And something I thought modern day Mario Kart players won't know the experience that we had in the 90s, where you had to race to get your favorite driver before your buddy did, because there was no duplicate races in the game. So there was always that race to get Toad or Koopa, because they kind of handled the best and that kind of thing. So yeah, I thought OG Mario Kart it's got to be in there in our list today.
Yeah, I feel like pretty much most people, like Switch owners today, had Mario Kart back in the day because it had everything. Like it was pick up and play. It was like multiplayer, and it was very accessible. Like you could do 50cc. I think it went through to 150cc.
150,
Johnny, is that
yeah,
right? Yeah, it
yeah,
went all the way through to 150, which was hard because some of those levels, particularly the levels like the ghost theme
yeah,
levels, I remember like the tight
yeah,
corners. And then levels like Rainbow Road, which became infamous because there were no like barriers. That like there was definitely a lot of frustration
yeah.
going, God damn it, like going super fast and that. But yeah, absolute classic, and you'll find that online and also the SNES Mini. Like it's definitely one of those games. If you could only play like 5 Super Nintendo games, to go back and play the original, and then see how much it's changed with the modern iterations, which I do appreciate, like all the little updates we have these days, like quality of life things to make it a bit more playable. But that's where it all started. Yeah, so look, on to my next one. We've only got 2 left each, and I think I will talk about a bit of a weird one. This one's not like a Nintendo first party one or one that's as well known, but I think it's kind of iconic in the similar way that the Virtual Bart game was that Johnny mentioned. This is Earthworm Jim 2. So one thing we saw with the Super Nintendo, and I kind of wanted to bring a balance to the list I had, in the sense of like, yes, there are lots of great first party Nintendo games. I've talked about those, but like there were heaps of these kind of new franchises that emerged, and some of these were cross platform. So this is on Sega as well. And this is the second in the series, but it was just like a quirky, cool, stylized platformer. It didn't have a brand behind it. I had it. If you don't know what's going on, I don't blame you. It's pretty weird. Like in this level, you literally have a trampoline that you have to carry from the screen left to right to bounce puppies who get thrown out of a house on the trampoline into a pipe. I don't know how to explain this game better than that. That's part of the game. It was full of mini games, but essentially you play as like this, earthworm who is in like this spacesuit. Look, I can't explain what's going on. You just have to make of it what you can. But it was so cool. You navigate these levels. It was a really well built 2D platformer. You could like whip your head, like you'd pull your head out and whip enemies with it. You could shoot them with your blaster. You would like launch cows into the sky. You would like use your backpack to float. It actually just played really well as a game. I like the second one more than the first one, specifically because that puppy level, and it was kind of cringy as well. Like it drew on the whole toilet humor stuff, which is great as a teenage kid. Like like all like snot and all that stuff was around. And that level with the puppies, like it always stuck in my brain because if you didn't catch the puppy on the like trampoline, it would just explode into like a bucket of like goo. And I was like, oh my god, is that what puppies are made of? Like they're so cute. Like if you drop it, that's what happens. And I remember thinking I'll never drop a dog in my life because of this game, and that's what happened in real life. But yeah, Earthworm Jim 2 was just like it was just a really cool game that I had, and I remember going like, I don't know what this is, I don't know a TV show, but it just looked fantastic. Like we saw really advanced graphics in that era. I mean, he's putting a pig down a slide. I can't tell you why. I actually don't remember some of this stuff, and I'm not sure why it's happening. Did either of you guys get onto this crazy Earthworm Jim 2 series, or is this just me?
I saw a couple of people playing this on the Mega Drive in Brazil.
Yeah.
I don't remember seeing anybody playing on the Super Nintendo. I know there's a version for the Super Nintendo, but on the Mega Drive, I think that was a little bit bigger than the SNES. But this game is so crazy. It's really fun. It's really fun.
Yeah, it's really cool. Lots of cool mini games. I don't know how you can play it these days. I'd like it if they released like a collection, kind of like they have done with other collections, with 1 and 2, which I can see happening at some point. But yeah, Earthworm Jim 2, very cool. Ludley, what do you got for us?
Oh, I got a Final Fight.
Yes.
That was a good one. That was a good one. But that's the kind of game that I say you can play this by yourself, it's cool, but it's so much fun when you play with a friend, And then you keep shouting at your friend, you need to help me here, otherwise we're gonna die and everything, It's good. It is fun. Like Final Fight. And it's funny that from time to time you see like maybe some Street Fighter characters on the background. And the same on the Street Fighter games, sometimes you see some Final Fight characters on the background as well. It's kind of like one of the crossovers that Capcom used to do in the old times. That was really fun because we'd be like, oh, why this guy's doing here? Can I play with this guy?
Yeah, I remember that guy on the screen is one of the characters in Street Fighter. I'm like, why am I fighting multiple versions of him in Final Fight? It was kind of weird. Yeah, Final Fight was really cool. So I think it was co-op. Like, I think it was like you could have like multiple characters on the screen.
Yeah.
And the fighting mechanics were pretty decent from what I remember. Like you can go back and play like Neo Geo classic arcade versions of this. Yeah, it was a pretty decent brawler for its time. I don't know that the characters were well balanced though, in my view. Like I remember Hagar or whatever, the big guy, he had massive reach, and I'd just always go him because I'd be like, hey, this guy's like an absolute beast. But yeah, Final Fight is a beloved series. Johnny, did you get into the Final Fight series, or are you aware of it?
Oh yeah, definitely aware of it. I'm pretty sure it was something that I looked at in gaming magazines for sure. I don't think I ever really got much hands-on experience with it. Just wasn't available in like my local rental store and that kind of thing. But definitely been aware of it for sure.
Yeah, no, Final Fight, very cool. It's definitely part of that group of like the core brawlers that came out. And again, like a showcase for the Super Nintendo of just the variety of games, from like role-playing games to fighting games to racing games to beat 'em ups. Like it had absolutely everything from all the big publishers and developers. But Johnny, we're on to the last one, so I feel like you might have, you might have one or two more that you've got here. What do you got here to share with the people
I'm
of
just
Perth and
going
Beyond?
I know we're going a bit over time today, so I'm going to very quickly take us back to RPG land and just briefly mention what a beautiful game Secret of Mana is. It's another game by Square Enix. Unfortunately, it's still in my pile of shame. Have not completed the game yet. I've been playing it. I was playing it last night and having so much fun with it. Just visually beautiful. I love the music. The music is so good. And I have a little bit of a sentimental attachment to this game because when my daughter was about 5 or 6, when she first started noticing video games, and we'd gotten a Super Nintendo Mini, she'd constantly be telling me, "Dad, want to play the water game, and she's obviously referring to that opening scene of Secret of Mana where the lead character Randy falls off the bridge and into the water, and then finds the mana sword. So I've got a lot of sort of sentimental attachment to Secret of Mana for that reason. But it is just a beautiful game, and it's just a great story. Like the story, how the story starts off with, the sword gets pulled out, and then that sort of unleashes all the monsters, and they start attacking the village, and the hero gets exiled because the hero brought on all the monsters onto the village. It's kind of like it's got a pretty deep story for a 16-bit game. So it's my mission to finally finish it. It's a really good game, and it deserves to be out of my pile of shame.
It's a pretty long game. So I remember playing this too, like growing up. And would you say, Johnny, it's one of the more accessible RPGs? Because I know some people don't like the tactical battle style one when there's lots of grinding. This one has like a real-time combat system where it just flows really well. Is that something you like enjoyed about that as well?
I think I liked it because being a big Zelda fan, I like the action style combat, not so much. It's not in the sort of turn-based model of a lot of RPGs. So it's a good kind of blend, actually. So I think it's one of the appealing features of it. It's also very kind of it's got some good quality of life in terms of you got the little circle menu, so you can quickly cycle through your items on the screen. So you don't have to go spend a lot of time in menus and that kind of thing too much. And all that kind of, there's lots of good kind of little engagement when you walk through the village and talk to people. I love that stuff in games, so that there's loads of that kind of stuff.
Yeah, it's cool. And actually seeing this footage now reminds me, like, even when you'd hit the ray bites, like the rabbits, like,
Yes.
because they kind of did the whole like renaming convention thing that we saw in a lot of Nintendo franchises, and the numbers come up like that. I feel like that was new at the time, but I remember like hitting them and it's like, oh, I did 3 damage, because sometimes your damage would vary. You'd be like, no, I need to do more. And then sometimes you'd hit them and they'd chunk up and stay still.
Yep.
And you'd be like, yes, I've kind of hit them. And then you'd build your party. Like you'd actually get a party in this game, which would control pretty well too. So it was just like a really well-rounded RPG game. One of the best, for sure, like on the Super Nintendo. All right, well, the final one for me, people of Perth and beyond, you know how much I love Donkey Kong Country. I do have to mention the second game of the series because I think it's the better game in the original Donkey Kong Country series on the Super Nintendo. You can play any of the 3 and have a great time, a challenging time because they're all hard games, no mistake about it. And I do think the modern versions on the Wii U, which come to Switch and the Switch ones, just are better for newcomers. But Donkey Kong Country 2 was brilliant in that, much like Mortal Kombat 2, it took the original formula, then it elevated it. So the environments are a lot more diverse. Like you're seeing like pirate ships, for example. There's a level that's like all honeycomb, which is really cool with the wasps. And then it took the animals that we saw in the first one and gave us more interesting and more like user-friendly animals. Like, so for example, in the first game, you could use Slippy, I think it was the frog, but he was really awkward to control. In the second one, they give you a snake who does a high jump like the frog, but is a lot more easy to control and looks really cool. And then I just had my most beloved character of all time, which is like this spider that you could ride, which was super cute, but super useful and only available in a couple of limited levels. You could make platforms out of the webs, which is super useful in a platform game, and climb your way around. But yeah, this game was just beautiful. It had all the hallmarks of the Donkey Kong franchise. It looked gorgeous. It had an absolutely wonderful soundtrack. I'll never forget the theme when you boot up the game and there's like a treasure chest with Donkey Kong and Diddy Kong, and it just like has this really cool kind of breezy piratey vibe, and that's the theme of the game. And it's lovely. It's just lovely to play. Like I think you can go back and play it. And for those of you who do find the platforming of this game difficult, Dixie Kong is a brilliant character because you can use this special move which lets you just kind of like spin your hair and slowly go down, like slowly like float down, kind of like Princess Peach does and Yoshi does. So a bit more user-friendly in that way, which I'm all for. But did either of you guys play Donkey Kong Country 2 specifically?
Yeah, I finished the first one on the Game Boy Advance. So I used to play this in the SNES, but I don't remember if I had a copy. I think I used to play in a friend's house. So I never had a chance to finish the game. So I finished on the Game Boy Advance. Then I'm moving to the second one. I'm actually halfway through that game. I'm not
Oh, cool.
playing constantly, but from time to time I pick and try to do a couple of stages. Pretty good game. Pretty good game.
Yeah, it's good. It's hard to go back to kind of like, yeah, like you were saying, but it still looks nice. And if you want to play through it, you get through the levels and they all look different and interesting. So, yeah, very cool. Lovely. What's your last game for this top 15 pick of games that we've got going?
Surprisingly, is a game based on a movie. It's Aladdin. But back in the day, Disney games were really good on consoles. Not say they are bad nowadays. There's a lot of good Disney games that come from time to time. But this one's like I think because of the simplicity of the 2D graphics, and the mechanics, it was a game that everybody used to play. Like I remember most of my friends had a copy of this game, and it's not very common to everybody has like same games there, but everybody had this Aladdin, and it's really fun. It's really good. It's really well made, And they had a remake for the not remake, sorry. Package deal for the Switch that have like three Disney games. This Lion King. Can't remember what was the other one.
Jungle Book. I think the Jungle Book.
Yeah,
Jungle Book, Lion King, and Aladdin. Yeah.
So it's I got this one again to the Switch, and my kids were playing the other day. They enjoyed the game as well because they like 2D games. I think kids like things more simple when they start playing games, and they've been playing this and being happy.
Yeah, like 2D platformers were huge on the Super Nintendo, and it was just like a really good licensed game. And again, it looked really nice. Like graphically, it's one of the better looking games. And then, like you said, like Disney's massive now, obviously, and has been. But we saw like the peak movies from our time growing up, like Lion King and Aladdin and Jungle Book come out, and they just fit that platformer genre so well because you could kind of visualize yourself going, yeah, I'd love to do like a level in the Sultan's palace. And then like it didn't happen in the movies and the story, but it kind of expanded on them. And look, shout out here, we can see Aladdin with like a cloth. Breath of the Wild totally ripped that off. Just saying. Yeah, but no, great pick. And also available on the Sega Mega Drive. So just a really good cross-console game. Brilliant game to play. Johnny, we have got one game left, and I think it's a little-known one, but I think it needs to be talked about. So what are you going to wrap the show up with today?
I saved the best for last. Long-time viewers from Perth and beyond will know that my favourite game is The Legend of Zelda, A Link to the Past, and I've talked about it on the show before. So I won't say too much more today.
Take your time, Johnny.
To say that I just feel still to this day, because I've gone back and replayed it very recently and had so much fun with it, that it still feels for me like to the perfection of Zelda, especially 2D overhead Zelda. I love how well it handles the light and dark world video game trope. Possibly this game even invented it. And it has easily my favorite dungeon item and dungeon master of all time, and that is the water temple in the dark world. You get the hook shot in that dungeon. I wish I had a hook shot in real life because I'm incredibly lazy. I could hook shot things instead of having to go off and go around and pick them up. I love the final boss of that level. It's like the Argus jellyfish that kind of throws its spawn at you as you fight it, and then it's like one-eyed, and you have to like shoot it down to beat the boss. Look, this game isn't the most difficult Zelda game. It's very balanced, but it's just the most fun to play. So had to be mentioned as we close out our Super Nintendo special today.
Yeah, no, it's awesome. I love that you mentioned like your favorite like dungeon as well, Johnny. do you feel like this gives you like the quintessential experience? Like if you're wanting to get into Zelda for the first time, like with the temples, like the power-ups, the overworld, is that like a good place to start for people who
Without
are
a
new to
doubt.
Zelda? Do you
Yeah, without a
yeah.
doubt. You can have a lot of fun. Like the OG Zelda on NES is a great game, but this is much more polished and also easier on the eye. And look, later entries are amazing too. Breath of the Wild, Tears of the Kingdom, etc., have done amazing things, but this is my kind of go-to Zelda, and it's another game, a bit like Super Metroid. I'll play it again and again, and still enjoy the experience so much. Yeah. Oh, speaking of that's that water temple I was referring to. Just love it.
Awesome.
They have this one for the Game Boy Advance as well. I've been playing this on the Game Boy Advance. It's a really good game. It's a really good game. Like I tried a couple of times to play the original Zelda. I can. This is much better. This is much more polished, you know.
Yeah.
So for people that has not much time and need to start on Zelda and like, oh, I want to start on the 2D Zelda, I would say go straight away to this. You have a couple of options: playing the mini, playing on the Game Boy Advance. You know, there is a story about the whole Dark World that I can't remember. I think they say it was a last minute decision, but they decided to go through this one. And they did very well. Like they did very well.
Yeah, that was a great kind of reveal because you've gone to your 3 dungeons and you think you've gone to like the final palace, and then the wizard Aghanim sends you into the dark world. Then you've got a whole other I think it's 7 or maybe 9 dungeons to go through in the dark world. So it was a great sort of, back in the day, it was a kind of great video game reveal where you go, oh, I'm not at the end of the game, I'm actually just really starting.
For me personally, I've played through some of the Zelda games like Wind Waker and Skyward Sword more recently. I haven't honestly played this all the way through. I remember playing it a little bit back in the day on the Super Nintendo, really enjoying it, but just not. I didn't buy it, so when I hired it, I didn't hire it enough to play it all the way through. But it's really cool hearing that you can go back and play it these days. And I think we're not speaking with rose-tinted glasses because, like you said, Ludley, the original probably doesn't have those quality of life polish elements that you can see in the Super Nintendo game era, where these games really do hold up. Like looking at all these games I've listed, I think you can pick them up and play, and they look clean enough to have enough quality of life improvements. Highly recommended. So yeah, awesome game to wrap up with, Johnny. And speaking of wrapping up, that is the end of our episode today. So people of Perth and beyond, I hope you've been inspired to pick up your old Super Nintendos or buy a mini or get on the Switch Online or watch some videos. Oh, and he's got one there. We've all got one here. Yeah. We don't sell the Super Nintendo mini. I have mentioned that on the podcast. We don't, but we all love it and we have it.
Whereas Nintendo should give us like some ad money there. We promote that.
Yeah, exactly. I mean, Nintendo, I'm not going to say no. We just talked about 15 of your games. But really, it's such a fantastic console. Even if you haven't experienced it or had a Mega Drive or a PlayStation in the next generation, we do recommend checking it out if you can. But for this week's episode, that's all we have. Not far from Christmas, a couple episodes left, but thanks, guys, for being on. Any final words from you, Ludley, about the Super Nintendo era or for our viewers?
Super Nintendo is special for most of the people. Like I think for our age is the ultimate 2D machine. You know, like you still have like 2D machines, but after the PlayStation and Nintendo 64, they went too hard on the 3D. And there was still a couple of options of 2D games. A PlayStation, you still have like Castlevania here and there. But in the end, like I think the Super Nintendo was the ultimate 2D machine, you know? Game Boy Advance still picked up a little bit of this later on. But yeah, like I think even the limitations of the Super Nintendo made the games better because they had to work hard to compensate for that. Yeah, but there's no mistake. Like it's one machine that even nowadays you get the mini, there's a lot of ways to get these games, you know, and they still worth playing. Most of the games on 2D on the Super Nintendo worth playing. That's kind of different from the NES. You know, the NES, like most of the games, they look dated, but the Super Nintendo, no, they still look good. they play good and they're fun. So yeah.
Awesome machine. Johnny, how about you? Any final words for the viewers?
Oh, I just wanted to say thank you to all the hungry viewers of Perth and Beyond who have been enjoying the show and watching the podcast, and keep it up and keep enjoying those Super Nintendo classics, guys.
Yeah, it's awesome to pull out your Super Nintendo Mini or your Switch Online for like the upcoming holiday period. And for those of you who wanted to know about more Super Nintendo games, go check out our Super Nintendo special where we talk more in general about the Super Nintendo features as a console and our memories, and a list of about I think it was 9 games. If it wasn't here, we mentioned there. Who knows? We could do another special because it was just a console that was that good. But that's all from us for now. For the people of Perth and beyond. So it's Perth Gaming Crew Show, over and out. See you later.